I'm Gina Genovese. I'm Executive Director of Courage Connect New Jersey, and I'm really glad that you're all here. Unfortunately, I should have put in the directions, do not take Route 1, because I've gotten 3 distress calls of people that are on Route 1 and tell me that it's clogged up. So hopefully people will be spilling in as we continue the program. Just to let you know, the ladies' room is on this side of the auditorium, and the men's room is on this side of the auditorium. And if you can turn off your cell phones, that would be great. We also will be having a 15-minute break so everybody can do their business in between our panels. Last year I was looking around and surfing the net, and I came up with this slide. I found this slide on the internet. And the interesting thing about this slide is that it had the word Pennsylvania in it. Coalition for Sustainable Communities, which is an organization in Pennsylvania, created this slide and had Pennsylvania in it. So I called him up and I said, well, can I change it to New Jersey? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. So that's what I did. And frankly, you could change that to New York State, you could change that to Illinois, you could change that to Iowa, you could change it to Massachusetts. There are many states that are faced with municipal sustainability. Princeton was on this road as well, but they chose a different path. They chose a different road, and they had the courage and the vision to do that. They just didn't have a consolidation study commission. They implemented consolidation. And that's why we're here today, because what they did was truly historic, and we want to share it with the rest of New Jersey. I'm going to introduce Mr. Chad Goerner. He is the former Princeton Township Mayor. He's a study commissioner, former transition task force member. And it's not just him, it's many people that made this happen. A lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and they're successful. And they're resources for all of us. And here is one of the best resources in New Jersey, Mr. Chad Goerner.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I first wanted to start out by talking about our path and the path that we decided to take, because I think that regardless of what you're here for today, whether it's looking at consolidation in your towns or a shared service or something to that effect, the process that we took, I think, will shed some light onto the ways that you could go about starting an effort like this, some of the pitfalls, some of the obstacles that you may be up against, and hopefully this will help, kind of position you to undertake a study or at least start to consider this issue in your community. What I wanted to talk about first is why is this important? And if you take a look at the screen above, what you'll see is that the consolidation of Princeton Borough and Princeton Township was historic. I mean, there hasn't really been a large-scale consolidation in the state of New Jersey for almost a century. But beyond just that achievement, this process has uncovered, a significant amount of savings for the community on an annual basis. There's actually a municipal property tax decrease slated in the municipal budget for this year as a result of the savings realized from consolidation. In addition to that, at full implementation, which our study commission projected would be in a 3-year time frame, the new community is on track to yield approximately $4 million in annual savings when compared to the original budgets of the borough and the township. So this is significant. Was it easy? No, it was not easy. And we have a history as a community when it comes to consolidation. If you take a look at this slide here, if you read that quote where they talk about, the sadness and the passing of an era, and that, a nostalgic wish for the past does not bring it back, nor does it make the institutions of the past adequate to the present. That's a quote that could exist today, but it actually started back in 1952 when consolidation really became an issue in the Princeton community. The first study actually occurred in 1952. And it was voted down in both communities. Afterwards, we had a history of studying consolidation throughout the 60s and into the 70s, and what was interesting during that time was that the tax rates were so divergent that consolidation just didn't seem practical at that particular point in time. However, the merits of it, as discussed by all those commissions formed during those periods of time, were favorable. They felt that it would streamline governance, that it would eventually save money over time, and just improve the overall operating efficiency of a single municipal government. If you take a look at 1979, a commission was formed, and it was formed because of an act that was passed in the late 70s known as the Municipal Consolidation Act. And it was the first commission that was formed under that act to study consolidation in Princeton Borough and Princeton Township. And that commission met quite often and recommended consolidation, and it went to a vote. And it was a vote that failed in Princeton Borough by a mere 33 votes. And that left a lot of scars in the community. I mean, when something like that happens where a vote is lost by only 33 voters, it takes a long time to revisit the issue again. So while it had been discussed throughout the 80s, it really took, until 1996 for another commission to form. And that commission formed, studied consolidation, recommended consolidation, and it was ultimately voted down again by Princeton Borough by a wider margin than in 1979. So what would make this time different? When we looked at embarking on this quest yet again, we wanted to make sure that we kind of began the process with a foundation to hopefully ensure success. And that meant re-examining, the past failures and the things that went wrong, and how we could basically start this process on the right footing. And there were some fairly consistent messages that we got from the previous efforts. I mean, we went back to the Princeton Public Library, we read some of the newspaper articles from the time, we looked at the commission reports and letters to the editor from residents to try to understand exactly, how we can make this time different. Some of the things that were common in terms of themes, there was a fairly consistent recommendation to consolidate. Basically, every single commission that was formed recommended consolidation. Even the commissions in the 60s and 70s that were formed, while they didn't specifically recommend consolidation at that point in time, they recommended the merits of it. And the reason why they didn't recommend at that point of time was due to the divergent tax rates. The issue that we found that we realized needed to change was that the commissions that were formed under the older Municipal Consolidation Act, they didn't integrate governing body members with citizen members. So it left a communications gap between the commission and the elected officials, and made it very easy to create animosity between those two bodies. And we found that if we were going to form a commission this time, we needed to change it, and we needed to have better integration of citizens and elected officials when studying consolidation. The other thing is that, as you know, and you probably have already been discussing this in your community, or at least visited it in some way, a lot of emotions take play when you start talking about consolidation. A lot of people make up their minds before even looking at the issue of even studying it. And what we realize is that in order to have any type of objective analysis, we needed to have an independent consultant to objectively analyze all of the financial data and the service delivery opportunities in the respective communities. And that would be the only way that we could overcome a lot of the initial objections and gain the public trust throughout the process. The other thing is that this time around, we were aided by a new law. And a lot of you are probably aware, but in 2007, there was a law that was passed called the Local Option Municipal Consolidation Act. And that act helped us because it was actually modeled off some of the failed attempts that we had in the Princetons. And it, highlighting some areas, it gave us a lot of flexibility, especially in the formation of the commission. And that allowed us to get started without having commissioners run for office, which was essentially what happened in the previous, under the previous Municipal Consolidation Act. And it allowed us to integrate our elected officials and citizen representatives. So you had representation from both governing bodies on the commission and also citizen representatives at the same time. But this act is important because it allows the communities to apportion debt. So, a lot of times, the communities that are consolidating, one may have, a higher debt level than the other, and if you allow a portion community to basically be responsible for any debt that they incurred prior to consolidation, and then any new debt in the consolidated municipality is shared among the entire new municipality. So that overcomes one of the, kind of what could be a major obstacle in consolidation. It allows for advisory planning districts, and those are districts that can be created that have a say in front of the planning board and requires a written response from the planning board in regard to any development projects. It allows for the creation of service districts, so that if you have, a specific service that's provided in one community but not in the other, you can continue that service and apportion that cost of the service to that municipality. One of the key things, it allows you to keep your ordinances in place. In the previous efforts, one of the biggest concerns was that, okay, well, if we vote to consolidate, we're going to have to consolidate all of these ordinances that we have, and they're divergent. And so that's going to be a tremendous amount of undertaking, both from a legal cost perspective, but also just from a perspective of citizens understanding all the different ordinances that would end up being combined in the new municipality. This allows you to keep those ordinances in place and modify them over time, provided that you review them over a 5-year period of time. So it gives you a little bit more time to adjust and find out what's the best fit for your new community, essentially, when it comes to ordinances. And I mentioned the flexible creation of the study commission. So when we got started this time around, we changed things. We went about this process hopefully to encourage a successful outcome. And the first thing that we did is we put together a proposal to form a study commission. And that proposal initially was a proposal to study consolidation only. And we felt that we had support in both governing bodies, both in Borough Council and in Township Committee, to move forward with a study commission that just looked at consolidation. But we stepped back and we thought about it, and we felt that in order to get this process started and to get on a path to building the public trust in this process, we wanted to get near unanimous support from Borough Council and Township Committee. And in order to do that, we modified the proposal. We modified the proposal to basically look at shared services for our 2 largest departments, which are Public Works and Police, or full municipal consolidation. And that was important because it gave us broad support. The resolution passed unanimously, and we were able to get started basically with both governing bodies on board with the process. The commission was formed, as I mentioned, to have representatives from both governing bodies and then citizen representatives from each municipality. We had an open application process for our commissioners so that they were encouraged to send in their resume or fill out an application and then write a cover letter as to why they felt they would be a good fit for the commission. And then what we did is, as governing body members, we reviewed those applications to make sure that we had different skill sets for the commission so that when it came to issues as it relates to finance or public safety, et cetera, that we had citizen representatives that had some level of experience in those particular areas. And as I mentioned before, we conducted a study under the Local Option Act to give us additional flexibility. So as far as establishing the commission and getting this process started, it's important that the process is really, it's a study. It's not, if we form a consolidation commission, or if you form a consolidation commission, or you look at a shared service, it's a study. It's a way to objectively analyze what's the best way to move forward for your community. And we felt that after all of these years, what we were doing wasn't sustainable. In 2011, when we looked back 5 years, we realized that in the township of Princeton, we reduced our staff by 18%. And we see that happening in a lot of communities. A lot of communities are faced with, obviously right now we have the 2% cap, but in addition to that, there's a lot of unfunded mandates and increasing level of costs that communities face, and there's only a limited number of traditional options that you have. And those traditional options, as a lot of you probably know, are either dipping into your surplus, which is a temporary Band-Aid, reducing staff, and commensurately cutting services for services that residents demand. So we felt that we had to find a way to be more sustainable in managing some of the fiscal challenges that we were facing, and also under the light of the fact that a lot of costs were escalating much faster than the 2% cap that was imposed on the municipalities. So in order to do that, we wanted to go about this study. And what we did with the commission is we made sure that the commission was completely open. We established a standard operating procedure. All meetings were open to the public. And when I say standard operating procedure, we put together bylaws of exactly how the commission would operate, what constituted a quorum, things like that. And it may sound, common sense, but it was important to establish that from the beginning, to make sure that kind of the process that we went about was in a way impenetrable to criticism as it related to openness and transparency. We also used subcommittees, and this was an idea that was pioneered by our commission chairs. One of them is here today, Valerie Haynes and Anton Lanston. And the subcommittees operated to streamline the workload because we had a very ambitious time frame. We started basically in the fall of 2010, actually in the winter of 2010, and we're completed with our work essentially by June of 2011. So it's a very ambitious time frame for local government to operate, especially when you're dealing with two municipalities. And the subcommittees were formed in various different areas. We had a finance subcommittee, we had a municipal consolidation subcommittee, we had subcommittees formed for each of the shared services that we considered, which was public works and police. And one of the most important subcommittees was also our outreach subcommittee. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. The transparency issue was important, and with the help of our consultant, which was CGR, we put together a commission website. And on that website, basically every single set of meeting minutes would be posted as soon as possible. All meeting agendas would be posted. Any handouts that were provided at the meeting would be posted. It also had an opportunity for residents to provide us with feedback. So if there was, concerns that were raised or issues that citizens brought to our attention, it put it on the radar screen for us to address and address proactively. But I can't stress enough that with this process, the most important, I think, factor in the ultimate success of the commission's work was the initial and ongoing public outreach. We actually were proactive in the way that we went out to the community. Throughout the commission's work, we conducted over 70 meetings with the public. And these were not just commission meetings where we invited them in to go over the various different reports at the different stages of our work, but we also held a series of neighborhood meetings in every single neighborhood in Princeton Borough and Princeton Township. We held meetings with all stakeholders in the community, like Princeton University, for example. And we did that not only at the outset, but we did it after our options report and after our recommendations and right up to the vote. And it was important because I think it helped not only educate the public as to the process that we were going through and the thought process that we used in order to arrive at the recommendations that we were making to the community, but it also allowed them to voice concerns that they had, allow us to address those if we could, and I think it ultimately led to the success of the effort. So if we take a look at our study process, so when we got started, we formed this commission, we got started, and we established kind of that standard operating procedure, transparency, and committed to initial and ongoing public outreach. We embarked on this kind of ambitious campaign. And the initial work that we had was a baseline report. And a baseline report that was conducted by CGR, our consultant, was critical because it gave us a foundation for analyzing the service delivery levels in each community, the number of staff performing each function in each community, and it actually I think gave each side, both the township and the borough, a window into what was happening in each of our communities, and allowed us to kind of initially take a look at, oh, well, they're providing that service, we're not, or we're both providing this service, and there's 5 people that are doing it in this community, and there's only 2 in this community, and how can we go about, bringing that together and making it function more efficiently and effectively. And that baseline report, I forget how many pages it was, but it was about this thick. It gave us, at least kind of the initial foundation